Hi, I'm Jim, and I was retired. You may have heard a lot of talk about Roth conversions early in retirement. And this week, I asked Boldin and Grok for some help. The calculations have become even more complex after the One Big Beautiful Bill Act and its temporary senior bonus deduction. Pay more taxes now or pay more taxes later? I'm left wondering, should I Roth or not? Stay tuned. This video follows up another recent one I did on Boldin, which needed some updating after the One Big Beautiful Bill. And true to form, the folks at Boldin have updated their planning software with the changes, including the permanent tax brackets and enhanced standard deductions, and the big temporary senior bonus deduction. Now, I've done a video on that recently too. It's not quite no tax on Social Security, and it does factor into our calculations in retirement. Now, here's the deal. Boldin has calculated in the new larger standard deduction of $31,500 for a married filing jointly, and they've also factored in the regular senior bump of about $1,600 for anybody age 65 plus. But the senior bonus deduction of $6,000. So the senior bonus deduction only applies if your modified adjusted gross income for a married filing jointly couple is below $150,000. If it's above that, it phases out all the way through a adjusted gross income of $250,000, and it's a calculated of 6% per person or 12% for the couple. And if you are over that $250,000 threshold, then the couple loses the senior bonus. And the senior bonus only applies in the tax years of 2025 through 2028. Now, those numbers look large, but if you're already spending about $100,000 a year in a high-cost state like New Jersey, and you're trying to do some Roth conversions on top of that, maybe trying to max out the 12% tax bracket, or maybe you can go up towards that $150,000. You could easily exceed that $150,000 and get a lower bonus deduction. I'm going to put a link to some recent articles I read on the subject in my notes below, as always. The first place I went to was the Boldin's updated Roth Conversion Explorer. Now, this is my personal view, so I'll mask some of the numbers, but I started by topping out a 12% tax bracket and went through the process of selecting the Roth account and saying that I don't want any taken out of the conversion, just do that. And it came up with 4 transactions that would help a little bit on my overall tax picture. But in this case, I was layering these Roth conversions on top of a one-time big expense that I was pulling from my IRA next year in 2026. And so when I went to this chart under Insights Taxes Federal Tax Deductions, and it showed that in 2026, we would not get any. So even though both of us will be over 65 by then, where's the $12,000? I asked the Boldin support team and shared that image, and they said the tool is working correctly. So I went back and confirmed, yes, I was pulling that one-time expense in 2026 with a large withdrawal from my IRA. And when I confirmed that the engine worked right, it was that big expense. I, by the way, encourage you to, if you have a question about Boldin, post it in the chat. It gets answered. So I went back to the drawing board, and I've decided I'm going to take a little bit more income in 2025 and take the balance out in 2026. I may also be plugging into Boldin that I'll use a taxable account, other savings or brokerage account for this one-time expense rather than a direct withdrawal from my tax-deferred accounts. I may fund it through the tax-deferred accounts, but I'll pull it out there so I know what the tax treatment's going to be. What if I want to do Roth conversions? How much should I know how to do? Is there a way to limit the Boldin Roth Explorer to avoid going into that limit? Through trial and error and a little math, I decided to run the Roth Conversion Explorer while setting a maximum conversion of no more than $40,000 per year. And you can calculate that rough limit based on what your base AGI is going to be. And the result was 4 Roth conversions like before, with a little bit less in lifetime taxes. So I'm saving something. And true enough, when you went to 2026, we were getting our full $12,000 of senior bonus deduction. So I could do maybe a little bit of smaller Roth conversions and pay for that wedding next year. By the way, you need to do this in future dollars if you want to ensure that you're going to get the full $12,000 amount. Otherwise, the figures start to go down based on current dollar view and your rate of inflation. So how do you like Boldin's changes to the Roth Conversion Explorer, including this option where you get to choose which Roth account to fund as opposed to setting up new ones? Jot down a comment in the notes below. I think these are improvements. Now, I also looked at my own DIY retirement withdrawal strategy spreadsheet, but that needed some work. So as you can see, I had to do some work on my own spreadsheet too, including eliminating the 2026 federal tax brackets there up in the corner, because under the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, we're not going back to those brackets. But he still had to make some changes to this table over here for the 2025 federal tax brackets to get that bonus deduction to work. I started with just using that cell there in A11, which just combined $6,000 and the senior bump to $7,600. But it didn't have that phase out for anything the adjusted gross income between $150,000 and $250,000. So how do you write a formula that might do that? I decided to ask Grok. So Grok came up with this suggestion. My original formula was already starting by adding the standard deduction and applying the senior bump when your ages were 65 and older with the first part of the calculation. The key was to apply the senior bonus, the $6,000 per person, only by testing the gross income against the phase out with that max formula in the middle. Here is the main sheet revised where the gross income comes in here. And in this case, for this row, for this sample in this spreadsheet, they were just over the 150,000 threshold. And again, I'm not going to make a distinction on my spreadsheet between adjusted gross income and modified adjusted gross income, but there is. And then this formula here, which I'll move up so you could see, has the new formula intact. Now here's that final formula on the sample spreadsheet. And I'll make this available on my Google site. I'll zip up this numbers version and I'll try converting to the Google Sheets and Excel, but that doesn't always work. Now note, I'm not updating every sheet. I'm just fixed the taxes tab and the main sheet. The rest is you're on your own. And if you need more on the withdrawal spreadsheet, go see the prior videos that I've done on this. I'll put a link to the most recent thorough review of the spreadsheet below. I used Grok for the formula help, and I have access to that through my X feed at I Was Retired. Be sure to follow me there where I cover similar topics about my DIY retirement. In this case, I decided to ask Grok about a sample couple. They're both over 65, so they both qualify. In fact, they're closer to 67. Husband collects a $25,000 pension. They have another $60,000 in IRA withdrawals, $10,000 in dividend income, and $5,000 in interest income. And Jill, in this Jack and Jill example, is going to apply for Social Security at 67 in January of 2026. And her FRA is $1,100. Jack is waiting for a maximum age of 70 benefit of $4,500 a month, and that'll happen in December 2028. And they're considering, should they do Roth conversions over the next 4 years, and should they be worried about the senior bonus or not? So I gave Grok the complete scenario about Jack and Jill, including some information about their portfolio, which is roughly a 60-40 portfolio. And so it went through and said Jack and Jill should not limit themselves to small Roth conversions over the next 4 years merely to avoid the phase out of the senior bonus deduction. Based on the detailed simulation projecting their finances all the way through 2053, which was the Jill's mortality date, assumed death. Here's a key analysis of the 4 scenarios that they looked at. Should they do conversions in the next 4 years? One is no conversion. The second is a small conversion that might stay within the 150,000 limit, so they retain the full senior bonus deduction. One that might go moderately up into it, and the fourth D, aggressive, where they would go to the top of their 22% tax bracket. As you can see, Roth favors the rationale for favoring larger conversions by doing them early, moving them from tax deferred into Roth. Roth is also invested more aggressively for the long term, slightly higher rate of return. It reduces future RMDs and the associated taxes. The taxes paid now at the effective 22% tax bracket is outweighed by the savings later. And the bonus deduction doesn't factor in at all. They also pointed out that Social Security is a good trade-off here. They start collecting Social Security with Jill's next year in 2026, which gives them more headroom to do Roth conversions since they'll need lower IRA withdrawals for expenses. Should they continue Roth conversions after that period? No. The suggestion is that once you've completed them, you're done, and you shouldn't gain much more by continuing to do Roth conversions. Now, to sum up, Grok recommends C or D, moderate or aggressive Roth conversions to save taxes over their retirement, especially when Jill becomes a widow, when we assume Jack dies at the age of 85. But if you look at the bottom row there, with the total taxes paid over their retirements and the final portfolio balance, it's not that significantly different. So is it really worth it? I still think making Roth decisions each year is the right approach as opposed to a multi-year strategy, and they're going to be modest Roth conversions that fit your strategy. I'm not sure you should lock into a multi-year strategy. Heck, you may decide to move to a state without an income tax in a few years. So what are your thoughts about the Roth conversions? Drop me a comment. Hey, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this channel if you like DIY retirement tips. And as always, I am not a financial planner. I'm not a tax planner. I am just a DIY retiree. I have no initials after my name. So always do your own due diligence and seek out a professional if you need one. Bye.